The cove is their port for the passing week. Kirishima gets drunk 3 more times and manages to completely avoid another hangover. He doesn't drink as much, but he's okay with that. Bakugou keeps teaching him to fight, to swim, and he's obviously enamored with the piercing that rests just over Kirishima's lower stomach. Kirishima showed it to Mina, and she promptly went to get one herself, too. The day they plan to leave, Bakugou is donning his full pirate gear once again to address the crew about the itinerary of their voyage. Kirishima mentioned that his hair could probably be tied back into a small ponytail, and Bakugou tried it out. It's cute, the way it sticks up, keeping his hair off the back of his neck. Kirishima watches now as he braids beads into his hair, precious and shining. He wraps his bandana around his head and puts his hat atop it all. He looks regal. Kirishima stands with the crew as Bakugou explains their course, the ports in between that they can stop at if needed. They're all told to keep an ear out for trouble, and their mouths shut unless they're looking for some. There are new recruits, just a handful. Some crew members aren't returning for the voyage. There's a new man, Koda, who will be on the ropes and on the deck, as well as a girl whose boisterousness is quite possibly louder than Mina's. She's on the lookout, too. Her name is Hatsume Mei. Kirishima remembers well because she introduced herself to every member of the crew at once, her voice demanding as much attention as Bakugou's. Bakugou's eyebrow twitched hard and he yelled at her to shut it, but he trusts Mina's choice of crew, so he's giving her a fair shot. Mina said they met at a brothel and she had impeccable aim with her darts, apparently due to her beyond perfect vision. Kirishima watches as the cove disappears behind them, and soon after any trace of land. Their home is first and foremost upon the sea. Kirishima wakes more often than not to Bakugou's sudden movements and shouts. Bakugou shakes until he's awake, then he scowls and yells at his inability to control the uncontrollable. Kirishima coaxes him to his side so they can settle into the furs together, but it seems almost every night of the week yields a troubled sleep for his captain. Bakugou stopped talking about his nightmares. Kirishima supposes they're all similar, and it didn't help before. Bakugou wasn't one to open up about fears or emotions, besides pride and anger. He was always stingy about letting show anything else. Kirishima likes, though, that he shows them to him, now and then. Even if the moments are rare, they make his heart squeeze and his cheeks feel warm. Now, on deck, he's thinking about the way Bakugou tucks his hair behind his ears before he kisses him goodnight. He spots a ship on the horizon. He stares at it for a while. It's large and growing larger. Its speed is impressive. "Hatsume," he calls out. She's messing with some rigging Shoji deemed too salt-corroded to run smoothly again. "Take a look over here. There's a ship." "A ship?" she says, bouncing up and over to where Kirishima is looking out to the horizon. She bounds so fast he half expects her to topple into the sea, but she merely slams her hands against the railing and looks out. "Yes, that's a ship, a fine one at that. A young one, and oh, blue coats." "Blue?" Shoji asks, standing quickly. "Hatsume, are you sure?" "Yes, I'm sure," she says, shielding her eyes from the sun. "Those are blue." "Blue as in Ida blue?" Shoji asks. Kirishima feels his blood chill. He'd met the Ida family many times, and while very nice to him and his family, their government was known for the swift execution of pirates, partnering many times with the brawn of the Kirishima fleets. Never did he think he'd have to feel the panic of their name. Kirishima hasn't a clue what to do. Never was there a fight aboard any ship he's been on in the past. A few fists thrown, sure, but knowing the fashion of the Ida fleet and knowing the style of the Crepitus, Kirishima swallows. "Captain," Shoji shouts, "we've got blue." Immediately the ship comes to life, bursting with chatter and shouts until Bakugou bursts out of the navigational room yelling for silence. He stomps over to Hatsume and extends the spyglass he's brought. It's long and golden, shining bright as he clicks it out. He scowls and spits when he's looked for long enough. "It's a fight," he says, addressing the crew. "Everyone get your weapons, load the cannons. We're firing as soon as they ask for us to accept defeat. If they surrender, it's fine, but if they board my ship, they die." Kirishima swallows thickly. The crew push past, knowing their motions, emotions high and excited, ready for the fight. Kirishima walks, feeling suspended. He's not afraid. The battle will be different now. He's on the side of the enemy. He hopes it'll be over soon, for the sake of the lives of both parties. He's retrieving his sword from Bakugou's quarters when Bakugou comes in himself.
Kiri.
Kirishima looks at him. He's tucking pistols into his belt. He has his twin swords at his hips already.
Will anyone aboard recognize you?
Kirishima thinks. Unless it was the head of the fleet, he doubts it, and the ship that's coming is smaller than the Commodore's.
I don't think so. If they do, they'll likely rescue you,
Bakugou says. He adjusts his hat and glances sideways at Kirishima. Kirishima smiles.
I'm not going anywhere, Bakugou.
Bakugou grins back, wild, his face lighting up with the manic expression Kirishima saw when he first met him. He walks over to Kirishima in 2 big strides and holds his face and kisses him hard. It's more a bruising press against his mouth, but Kirishima feels the energy pouring off of him. Bakugou pulls back, baring his teeth.
Let's go, love.
Bakugou's energy cascades off of him. It wraps itself around Kirishima, pulling him along. When they reach the deck yet again, it spreads out to each member of the crew, poised and ready. Tokoyami caws above them, circling in the near cloudless sky. The boat is close now, known for their speed. Kirishima isn't surprised. Their sails are white and pristine, billowing against the wind. They slow as they approach. Kirishima catches a glimpse of the ship's name, Ingenium. Kirishima breathes a sigh of relief that he doesn't recognize it, but he's still a little on edge. His sword already starts to feel heavy at his side. He grips it tightly. He'd use it only if absolutely necessary. He doesn't feel the same excitement as the crew at the prospect of a fight, but he knows their perspective. For them, it was always fight or die. Imprisonment ultimately meant death in the end. Kirishima's eyes shift to Bakugou, who's standing tall, cocky, eyeing down their enemy ship. For Bakugou, death didn't come, but he's sure there were years much worse than the nothingness beyond. Kirishima frowns. The boat pulls to their starboard side, and Bakugou announces under his breath that the cannons be readied. As the captain of Ingenium steps forward, Kirishima hears the wet creak and haul of the portholes dropping, and the low roll and thud of cannons shifting into place.
Your ship is on documented waters,
the captain calls out. Their deck is level with the crepitus, and Kirishima sees the man that's speaking. He's tall and broad-shouldered, his jaw set and square. He looks intense. He looks familiar. How long ago did he meet the family again?
Judging by your flag and your less than desirable attire, you're pirates. This trespassing is a crime against the Queen, and you are all under Her Majesty's arrest.
Bakugou looks around at his crew, amused. He throws his head back and laughs.
Do you hear this? We're less than desirable.
The crew laughs along too, and Bakugou steps forward.
Undesirable. They haven't even seen our good side yet. I doubt this one knows who the fuck I am.
Bakugou sets his feet apart and draws his swords. He takes a deep breath and yells his command into the air.
Fire!
Kirishima almost loses his balance in the reaction. The ship's boards shake beneath his feet and his ears ring with the sound of a dozen cannons blasting into the enemy ship. The sound of splintering wood and shouting race to meet his ears, rattling his brain with the sheer force of noise. He spreads his feet apart and braces himself for the coming onslaught, watching as Bakugou's crew swings to the enemy deck. Bakugou stays, and as the sailors drop onto the crepitus, his sword pierces through their bodies, their fate decided the moment they jumped onto the crepitus. He moves fast, and when more men manage to make their way onto his deck, Bakugou fights them easily, his footwork fast and tricky, outstepping the studied form of the sailors and parrying their blades easily. It makes Kirishima's heart race the way Bakugou looks in the heat of battle. He grins wide. His eyes are like fire and his blades as fluid and deadly as the liquid they ride on. When he watches them, there's no sound, no wind, nothing. It's just Bakugou, time suspended as he jumps and whirls in a dance that's lethal to any sailor in his path. His own sword weighs at his hip like guilt. He's unsure if he should use it to help, but the fear of doing so also messes with his head. His hand reaches to his sword. As usual, he's shaking. There's a step too loud close to him. There's a slight whistle in the air, and Kirishima's body jolts into a crouch before he truly registers the blade that passes quick over his head. His palms sweat and he rolls upright again. The man who lunged at him is about his size, but his blows are strong and quick. Kirishima dodging them just barely as he buries his sword into the wooden deck. The man yells and gets close to Kirishima, who hauls up his sword to defend himself.
Come here, pirate.
The man growls.
You're a pretty one. You look nice behind our bars.
There's no time to think, let alone respond. There's nothing but his blade protecting himself against the other. The noise around him suddenly closes in. Kirishima wary of his footing and other people in fights, and the blood staining the deck around his feet. This is nothing like fighting Bakugou. He's never tried to kill him before.
It's either death here or you come with me,
the man says between blows, his voice taunting. He grins when he speaks again.
I'd prefer to see you in our prisons. We have special treatment for handsome pirates.
Kirishima grunts at the man's force. His sword is wide and heavy. He catches his eye as he pushes his blade back, full of hatred, but also a glint of amusement. He was enjoying this. It makes his stomach turn. The chase, the hunt, the fight. It chills him how baseless the goal of the enemy groups were. Their job, yes, but the treatment beyond arrest was inhuman, and these men got off on the knowledge of what their capture would result in. There's an opening just beneath the sailor's left arm. His sword's so heavy he's been overlifting it to compensate. Kirishima lifts his sword to strike, but he hesitates. His indecision earns him a blow to the head with the hilt of the man's sword as he changes course to avoid Kirishima's potential hit. The metal strikes hard, resounding in his head after the shock of pain that makes his vision swim and his mouth gape as he falls onto the deck. The only thing that comes to mind as the man raises his sword once again is, "I'm about to die." Then, "I haven't sent another letter to Aiko in a while. Mother won't know what happened to me. I won't see the treasure with Bakugou. If I die here, we'll never finish 1001 Arabian Nights. I won't hear his voice again. If I die here, I'll never tell Bakugou one day that I love him." Kirishima blinks fast, stunned, his sword loose in his hand, but he manages to roll away, barely dodging the man's blade. The thoughts in his mind coming in a rush of frantic clarity mixed with, "No, no, no." He stands again, and when the opening presents itself, Kirishima moves without thinking. Something basic inside of him, something at the very root of his being, screams for his arm to lift the sword and plunge it deep into the rotting, blackened soul of the one who wishes to cut short his one and only precious life. With the resistance heavy around his blade, with the blood that shocks out of the dead man's body, Kirishima saves himself.